Sorry about that. Okay, recording's in progress. Hi, I'm Kathy Gundrum. I'm the director of the Capital District Library Council. We'd like to welcome you today to Digital Dialogues, exploring the intersections of libraries and AI. And I just briefly wanted to thank our four panelists. I'm very excited that they all said yes, and they all bring very different perspectives. I also want to thank two of my colleagues that are on the call, Chris Tosh and Marie DiGaetano, who are involved in the Libraries and AI Committee. This is an ad hoc committee that we started at the recommendation of the CDLC Board of Trustees. And I want to especially thank Mike Palmino, who is at Skidmore College and who agreed to chair this committee. I don't know if he knew what he was getting into, but we're excited with the work of the committee already. We have this great AI challenge on our website. We encourage you to take it and post your results on the Padlet. We are planning additional AI programs throughout the year. So we encourage you please to fill out the evaluation form at the end. And if you have ideas for other AI programs or any programs that CDLC can present, we're interested. We appreciate you being here. And again, thank you to our panelists and to the AI committee and the staff involved. And I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would like to thank you for attending. This panel discussion today is the second event of the year related to AI. The first one, for those of you who attended, was the webinar given by Nick Tanzi, AI for the non-technical personnel. And we're kind of building on that to show you what local libraries are doing now with AI and what they're planning to do in the future. It's the second of what we're planning to be we're planning for 3 events this year related to AI. As Kathy Gundrum mentioned, we're going to have 4 speakers: Doug Bixler from the Schenectady Public Library, Dr. Mila Gasco Hernandez from the University of Albany, David Walker, director of the library at Albany Law School, and Traci Tosh from Albany Medical College. So with that, I'll turn it over to our first presenter, Doug Bixler, who is the Support Services Manager for Marketing and Technology at the Schenectady Public Library, and will be talking about AI and visualization.
All righty. Thank you very much, Mike. Just make sure. Is everybody able to see AI imagery in a visual world? I got a thumbs up from Mila. Thank you, Mila. All right, so we're going to get started here. Just a quick introduction of who I am. I worked in the graphic design industry for over 25 years. I started off retouching professional photos in Photoshop and some other third-party proprietary software back in the 90s. So it was prior to the huge digital photography revolution. Preparing for this, I was talking with some of my coworkers and telling them about, how far we've come. And it's amazing to see that, I used to deal with professional photographers that would shoot medium format, weddings, family portraits, things like that. And I still remember that when I was working for the professional photo lab doing retouching back in Buffalo, we had a customer, EJ Morris, out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and still remember he took the 2-hour drive up to our photo lab to show us his newest camera he bought. That was a Hasselblad. And it was like their first digital camera, and it was only 5 megapixels in size. And this was 98, roughly, 1998. 5 megapixels in size, and it cost him $35,000. And that was the dawn. Everybody started, getting into their own digital photography. They wanted to do their own thing. So it's really interesting to see how far we've come. And now with, newest iPhone has a 12 megapixel camera in the back, along with 2 other digital cameras. So it's amazing how far we've come. I've also done package design for a lot of retailers out there: Gap, Saks, Price Chopper, Whole Foods. I worked for Car Freshener. It made the little trees that hang from your rearview mirror. Nobody realized that was a multi-billion-dollar international company headquartered in Watertown, New York, at the gateway to the Thousand Islands. So I designed everything from the packaging, the actual product, all the marketing, web design, Flash back in the day before iPhone killed that off. So that was a really fun job to get into, to see how you can get, use visualization to market just a product and get a feel and an understanding of what it's supposed to be to your customer. I've also worked in language translation companies, taking out text, getting it translated, putting it back in, making sure that it works, everything lines up properly. Also worked in a sign shop and doing vehicle wraps. So pretty much everything production based has been in my repertoire, and I brought it all here to Schenectady County Public Library System about 10 years ago now. I've been here. So I take care of all the marketing, communications, and technology support services for our library system. And so who is SCPL? We are a 9-location library system within the county of Schenectady. We have our one central library here in downtown Schenectady on Clinton Street, and then we have 8 branches all around the county. So we serve every possible socioeconomic level, from the most impoverished inner city aspects all the way to middle class, and then you go all the way up to the 1%ers. So pretty much I need to know exactly what my people, what my customers want, what's going to actually talk to them when I'm coming up with marketing materials for programs that we are offering to our public. So let's talk about today with AI. Is AI in a visual world a blessing, or is it a curse? Okay, so let's talk about a blessing first. People don't seem to realize we've been utilizing AI in our lives for quite a while now. Your smart home technology, that's your Alexa, your Siri, your Nest, your Ecobee thermostat, your Ring camera, that's all forms of AI that have been implemented over the past decade at least. Your GPS navigational apps. How many of you have CarPlay or Android Car in your vehicles, and you're using Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze, and it tells you what time you're going to arrive at your destination, and it's all live sourced from crowd sourcing, and that's using all that information in an intelligent way to let you know what's coming up on your trip. And then everyday software, your Microsoft Office, Adobe Creative Suite, Apple Music, Spotify, it's all using AI in one form or another. It's just that AI is the new trendy buzzword for it. You've known it as machine learning, algorithms, smart devices, predictive text, or deep fakes. So I think everybody's getting a little antsy when they hear AI and they start thinking of like Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and AI is going to take over the world. But we've been using it since its infancy. What's some of the good it's done for us? We've improved work efficiency because of AI. People are using ChatGPT to write up cover letters for job applications. They're using it to write articles for newsletters. Which with that, it's decreased a lot of our work stressors. I don't have to worry about, oh my God, I got to come up with, a 5-paragraph story to give to the board this month about what we did at the library. Well, I'll just plop in a couple of our main key points and let it write it for me, and I'll take a look at it. It should be pretty good, but it takes a lot of that stress off of me. It's opened up many new worlds in the possibilities of art. And that's where we're going to go today with my little section. And then, of course, it's also sped up research and development on a plethora of things, from technology to vaccine technology to AI itself. So what good has it done for us? I'm going to show you guys a little demo of what Adobe's been doing lately, and how it's kind of neat. It's some really neat stuff. So can everybody see my Photoshop screen right now? Perfect. All right, so this is a job I did just in the last month. We have a book display that we're doing at a couple of our locations here for sights and sounds and stories about the state of New York. So it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, a little signage display. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to start off with a picture of Niagara Falls, and let's go with something from the Thousand Islands. And I want to blend these images together because I want to make almost like a panorama. So I've gone in, I just kind of line it up a little bit. You can see here, the horizon line lines up, everything, it's all working kind of together. It's kind of nice. So what I'm going to do here is the first thing I'm going to do is I just tell it, I kind of put a little feathering on the image so it kind of blends itself into each other, but it doesn't look real, right? It's not enjoyable to look at. So at this point, what Adobe has done is they've built in generative fill for things so that all of a sudden you can take an image like that and I just select that area in between and I tell it, do a generative fill. And it actually isn't too shabby of a job. It kind of makes it look like the Niagara River flows into the St. Lawrence River here, if you're not, familiar with that area. So when all is said and done, and after a little bit more retouching, that's the final image that I came up with. And that's AI taking care of blending all the imagery together. In my old days, back in the 90s and even the early aughts, a composition like this to design photographically could have easily taken me an hour and a half. This only took me 5 minutes to do with a little retouching here or there. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a representation of the graphical idea to get it through. So we're going to have a little fun here. I'll show you guys what some of the things Photoshop's AI can do. And this goes across all the apps that Adobe offers. There's AI built into Illustrator, AI built into InDesign, AI built into Acrobat. But that's the beauty of AI is it's this one thing that has so many spider webs coming off of it that it can actually do. So here you've got a shot of the Capitol building down in Albany. So let's just say, all right, this is a nice shot, but I want to have people in it. So let's have some politicians standing around talking. So I'm going to tell Photoshop right now, I want politicians standing within this block that I just made. So I'm going to hit generate. It's just going to take, you're going to see how long it takes. So, I mean, that's not that realistic to look at, but what's nice is they give us options. So Photoshop gives me 3 options to go by. And I'm like, if that looks good, yeah, sure. But you know what? If you zoom in, the faces look kind of weird. That looks a little weird. If you don't like any of it, this is the beauty of how fast AI is getting is I'm just going to delete those selections, make a smaller thing. I'm going to put people talking. And let's do another generate real quick. And when you think about where this technology's come, that right there to me is a sellable image. I can use that for any kind of a layout. This one too, even though the faces are a little bit blurry, and also it looks like, oh, we've got a little like hidden cave back here actually that pops up. Like I said, AI is weird with what it's going to look at in the image and try and create for you. But in this case, I'd probably say that that's probably decent. If I'm going to use that in just a little flyer, I don't need to worry about the people's faces. But this is the fun stuff that Photoshop can do today with AI. So let's go to another one. Here we've got a beautiful shot of the Empire Plaza here in Albany with the egg. So say I want to have a fisherman, in this picture, even though it's a nighttime picture, we're going to put fisherman boat. I define the area right here where I want to put them. And you're going to see what it's going to do is it's analyzing this imagery here. And it's going to know that since I asked for a fisherman in a boat, I must be on water. So you'll see here, not too real there. This one didn't work out too good. I tried it out earlier. It worked out really great. I had a gentleman fishing with a nice long fishing pole and catching fish that don't exist there. So that's just, it's some of the fun stuff that you can tweak around with and play around with. So let's get out of Photoshop. We'll share this. So we're back to what good has it done for us. So we already talked about that with the Photoshop demo. Now, how is it a curse though? What are people's concerns about AI technology on imagery? Number one, you can't trust your senses anymore. You see images, you have to question everything you see in today's world. And I find that this goes back even to 2016 with the previous election. Was a lot of the fake news is out there. And the problem is with the fake news, people can create imagery that does back up that. So you have to question everything that you see or read in today's world, pretty much with a fine-tooth comb. And unfortunately, the curses with this AI technology for imagery is it can be and has been used for nefarious or illegal reasons. Yeah, I'm going to show you this video. I want you to think about this. This was 6 years ago, this video.
Doug, we're not getting the sound.
No sound? Okay, let's see here. It might be in my share feature here. Share sound. Well, look at that. Sound's not going to want to play through. Doesn't that figure? Can you guys still hear me though? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we'll just know that this, I'll fast forward the video here. And what you'll find out is it's Jordan Peele who's speaking, and they have tracked his facial features and used it on an AI created simulation of Obama. Like I said, this was 6 years ago. This was already done. It's so much better even till today. I just wanted to make sure that you saw how good it was and realize that it's going to be a lot better in today's world even. So here's another image. Dripped out Pope. I'm sure some of you have probably seen this floating around online and all that. It's a fake because the Pope's not going to be wearing some object like this. But here's the thing with it being a curse is it's clever, but it's not perfect yet. Okay. The one thing that's always going to be a dead giveaway to find out if an AI image or image has been created by AI is look at the hands. For some reason, AI just cannot figure out what these 10 digits are at the end of our arms and how they should actually work, and that there should be 10 of them. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's at least 13 fingers there that I count. But that's my that's my go-to whenever I'm talking to somebody and they ask me like, hey, do you think this image was faked? I always say first thing is look at the fingers. You always want to look at the hands. The next thing is let's look at this image again of the Pope, but closer up. His hand is wonky. What's he holding? You can't even tell what he's holding because the AI imagery has tried its best to know, yeah, he's got to be holding something. But you look at those fingers, they're blurred a bit. It meshes in with whatever it is. Is that, catnip in a container he's holding? Is it Parmesan cheese? Who knows what it is? The second one is look up at the crucifix, the chain. You have one chain coming down the Pope's one side of his neck. It does not go back up the other side. AI can't figure that stuff out yet, but it's learning. And that's the whole point. You also want to look for any words in imagery. I couldn't find a good one that I liked to show off, but when AI makes like a scenery or a landscape and it's got, logos on it or words like deli or things like that, AI does not know how to work with words yet. And a lot of times it starts looking like a Salvador Dali painting where the imagery is kind of like blending in with other things and it looks like the signage is melting. So totally very valid things to look for whenever you're questioning what is a real image and what's been created through AI. We were talking actually before we started here, I made the comment that AI is a lot like a toddler. You keep feeding your child all this information and they're going to get things right when they go out on their own and try to, assert what they think something is supposed to look like, and they're going to get it wrong. But they're going to learn because you don't need to keep feeding them a picture of a river for them to know what a river is and to maybe design a river, in a drawing. After so long, they understand what the characteristics are. AI is the same way. We keep feeding it information. It keeps reading other things. It keeps analyzing images. It will learn on its own. But just like anything, it's a tool. So is AI in a visual world a blessing or a curse? Both can be true at the same time for this, okay? Because in conclusion, like I said, it's only a tool. It's not going to take over the world. It's not going to launch the missiles. It's not going to come up with its own ideas of how to fake people out. A tool can be used to build and destroy. Think of AI as a hammer. It's the simplest possible imagery I can come up with for you. In one person's hand, it can create marvelous things. In a contractor's hands, you can build a beautiful house. In a craftsman's hand, you can build beautiful furniture. But in another's hands, it can kill and it can destroy. The hammer itself does not dictate its use. It's the person using the tool that dictates its use. People's intentions do that. So that's it in a nutshell that I want to cover with what AI is doing in the visual realm in today's world and how exciting it actually is. I've talked to other graphic designers, and some people feel that it's going to take away their job. And while it may put the tool in other people's hands to use, just like you've got people that create PowerPoints for their bosses. Well, before that, a boss would create it themselves, but it's just a tool that you get to let other people use and help them do their job better. But then again, at the same time, it can be used for nefarious reasons. So it's all about what you're going to use it for. But don't worry, it's not going to take over the world, but it may make you question the world that you see with your own two eyes. So that's all I've got. I've got my email there for work. If anybody has any future questions down the road about imagery with AI and how it's working and what's on the horizon, because Adobe's always coming out with some great innovations in their software. And I personally am excited about the future for AI, and I don't worry about the negativity, because if you worry about that all the time, you're not going to enjoy the good times. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mila.
Thank you, Doug, for that very enlightening presentation. It is something what generative AI is capable of. So moving on to our next presenter, Dr. Mila Gasco Hernandez. Dr. Gasco Hernandez is from the University of Albany Center for Technology and Governance, and will be presenting on a project funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which aims to understand the role of public libraries in fostering inclusive civic engagement and government-led AI initiatives. So take it away.
There we go. So thank you so much, Mike. Thank you, Doug, for a very interesting presentation. I think I am going to change a little bit the approach to AI. So I believe this is interesting that we are approaching AI from different points of view. What I want to share with you this afternoon is actually the first results, the preliminary results of a research project that we are conducted at CTGU Albany. So let me introduce first what this research center is. This is a Center for Technology in Government. That's the name of the center. We are a research-wide institute at the University at Albany doing research about information and technology in government. Mainly government, but we have also done a lot of research on nonprofits and other types of organizations. Not so much private organizations, that's not our domain. In the last, I would say, 10 years, we have been working with public libraries in digital transformation processes. We have been funded 3 times by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The first time was about the role of public libraries in opening governments. The second one was about the role of public libraries in building smart communities and cities. And only a few months ago, we were funded our 3rd project on the role of AI in promoting, in fostering inclusive civic engagement. And this is precisely the research project that I am going to present about today. So I think that we really do not have to talk a lot about the increasing popularity of AI. Doug has very nicely told us about that. What is true is that more and more organizations worldwide are adopting AI and using AI in different domains. And in particular, I would like to refer to some of these public domains because of the impact they have for citizens. So you'll see in the slide a few examples of domains where this new technology, not so new as Doug was saying, is being implemented. Welfare, policing, health. Clearly, there are a lot of benefits, potential benefits. The truth is that we don't really have a lot of evidence yet of those benefits, but there are a lot of potential benefits about using AI, but also there is a lot of challenges and a lot of harming implications of using AI, particularly for marginalized communities. What we are seeing is that, and what the literature says, not only academic literature, but also practitioner-oriented literature, is that in order to address these harms, in order to address mainly the service bias that we identify, collaboration and participation from those communities who have the highest potential of being harmed is very important. But of course, these marginalized communities' participation is not easy. The type of interventions that are needed do not really align well with the traditional mechanisms of participation. And our argument is that we believe that public libraries may play a role in promoting this inclusive civic engagement, this inclusive participation from marginalized communities. We do believe, as the slide shows, that public libraries, as they have already done for many years, can play a role in terms of providing digital equity, providing digital literacy. They can also play a role by offering spaces where participation, discussion of local issues around AI can take place. And finally, they can also offer a safe environment for the participation of marginalized communities. And this is important because research shows, and also a lot of reports show, that public libraries are trusted community institutions, in terms of trust, much more trusted than government organizations or other types of actors in the community. So this is the framework where we have thought, or within, we have thought our project on public libraries and AI. The goal of this research is to understand the role of public libraries in fostering critical and inclusive civic engagement in artificial intelligence initiatives. We have 3 research questions. The first one is about what role can public libraries play in raising awareness about AI. The second one is about the role that public libraries can play in fostering civic engagement. And finally, what opportunities, threats, benefits, challenge they experience in these endeavors. As I said before, the research has been funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. It is a 3-year research, and we are in our 7th month only. And we have a fantastic partner in this project, which is the Urban Libraries Council, which is an association of urban libraries both in the US and Canada. As I said before, the presentation that I want to share with you today is going to focus on one of the first tasks that we have conducted. I said that one of the first research questions that we have is to know about what role public libraries can play in raising awareness. The truth is that we believe that public libraries are already doing a lot, even though what they're doing has not been systematized or has not been collected or analyzed from a more academic perspective. So as we did also in our past 2 projects, the very first thing that we wanted to do was to try to identify what programs programs and services around AI public libraries were already or have been already implementing. We had 4 guiding questions. We were interested about the purposes of these projects. We were interested about the types of projects, the main components, and also given the overall goal of the project, we were very much interested to into what extent these programs and services were actually engaging marginalized communities that, as I said before, are the usually the ones also you know, that have that negative impacts from AI use. In terms of data collection, we have used 3 sources of information. So how have we identified those public libraries? First of all, we have identified databases from public library or libraries, for that matter, organizations such as ALA, American Library Association, ULC, our partner, but also the International Federation of Library Associations. So we have checked all those databases and we have been able to identify several libraries there. Because ULC is our partner, we could access their database of 173 members, and we were able to explore and analyze each of their websites. So we could also have, you know, firsthand access to the information about each of these public libraries, which are part of ULC. And finally, of course, we conducted kind of an environmental scan where we just used Google and some keywords about public libraries, AI, to identify additional information. The search was conducted between November 2023 and February 2024. We are just finalizing the writing of a report, which will be open access and distributed to all public libraries and, you know, other stakeholders interested in it. So the information is quite updated. Also, we identified 91 cases, 80 in the US and 11 in Canada. We identified more than 91, but our report and my presentation today is mainly focusing on the US and Canada. I also will share with you in a little bit a very cool map, I believe, where you can geographically identify where these public libraries, programs, and services are located, and you can get more information about them. And I will actually invite all of you to, if you are a public library and you have additional programs and services related to AI, to fill a form that you will find on that website and to let us know about your practice. The coding that we did, and I know that this may sound too academic, but how we analyzed and assessed the different practices was inductive. We really didn't know what to find. And in general, we looked for the purpose of the AI programs, the participants, the final users, the partnerships encountered in these programs, and finally, the specific content of the program. And what did we find? So we find that public libraries are offering programs and services around AI that focused on 2 main purposes. And I am now realizing that I should have, you know, switched the order on this slide, but I will start with raising awareness about AI, which means to provide information, general information, very well understood information about what AI is, what applications of AI that are out there, but also the benefits and challenges of AI in society. So very informative events for the community. The second type, and better said, the second purpose of the different programs and services that we found was to actually build competencies. And these building competencies mainly focused on building technical competencies around how to learn to use AI applications. So this is how we have differentiated the many different programs and services that we have found. One additional thing is that under each of these categories, we have identified also different types of initiatives. So if you look at the slide for raising awareness, we could also categorize the different programs and services as learning about AI, discussing AI, and experiencing AI. Learning about AI is mainly about unidirectional information. So, a guest speaker comes and gives information, delivers content about something with hardly any interaction from the public. Discussing AI, it is more about events that engage the community, that engage citizens and patrons in discussing a specific aspect of AI. So there is some content delivered, but it is mainly about discussing that content. And finally, experiencing AI, it is mainly about having AI-related exhibitions that also talk about how to raise awareness about AI. In terms of building those technical competencies, we also identified two types of initiatives: using AI and innovating with AI. Using AI is mainly about hands-on workshops. These hands-on workshops, as I said before, teach, train patrons, the community, in the use of AI. For example, building a robot, coding. While innovating with AI is not so much guided, if you will. It is more about using technologies related to AI, AI-based technologies, from a more individual or collective perspective, but without the guidance and support, the explicit guidance and support from the library. And we've identified that this type of initiatives usually happen in maker spaces. I have also brought a few examples of each of these activities. Very, very quickly, Queen Public Libraries has a We Are AI program. This is actually a course with several sessions over time that has been put together with the NYU Center for Responsible AI. We have another example, the St. Joseph County Public Library after-school AI program. This is a hands-on workshop. This library is in Indiana. And what they do is kind of courses, because they are regularly offered for 8-year-old kids or older, that after school come to the library and they actually learn how to use AI. I also brought the New York Public Libraries Building the World We Want Artificial Intelligence and Global Governance event. This was an ad hoc event organized by the public library, but it was interesting because it brought speakers from all over the world, and the audience was pretty wide, and it had a lot of impact. But again, it was a very informative event. One of my favorite initiatives is the Cambridge Public Libraries in Massachusetts Laughing Room. This is the kind of the AI exhibition that I was talking to you about, where there is this room, and citizens, patrons, and other visitors of the library come in the room, and then the AI system listens to their conversations. And if AI thinks that's funny, then it starts laughing. So people, first of all, understand that everything can be heard and seen, and therefore that also using AI or AI has privacy and security issues, but that they also can identify how AI is taking this information and coming up with something different, which is this laugh that they hear. And finally, the Boston Public Library's Kirstein Business Library and Innovation Center, which is a makerspace, business-oriented makerspace, where mainly people who are interested in maybe setting up a business or doing something about their already established business can use technology, and often AI-based technology, to improve their goals or to, accomplish some goals. So these are only some of the initiatives. And as I said, we have 91, and you are very welcome to read about them. You probably have seen when I was talking about each of these initiatives that I was saying that, for example, Queens Public Library is partnering with NYU. For most of the other activities, like the one organized by the New York Public Library, there is a lot of interaction. There are a lot of partnerships going on with external stakeholders. So we find that probably because of the low capacity that public libraries still have, and please let me better say, right? What I have just expressed, I'm not talking about, not having the capacity to do it, but mainly not having the time to do it, because this is coming in addition to everything else that the library is doing. But also librarians nowadays, it seems that they have to know about everything and anything. And of course, AI is one more thing that they need to add to their plate. So I'm talking about this low capacity in these terms. And what we've identified, given this situation, most programs and services offered by public libraries are offered in partnership with other organizations. And you have some examples here of the types of organizations. The probably most important partner is universities, because it is thought that in universities we find the expertise about AI, but we have also identified opportunities for partnerships with governments, nonprofits, and businesses. So very quickly, this was, the first preliminary results about the first task in this research project. As a conclusion, I think that we are seeing that public libraries are getting engaged in AI. They are clearly raising awareness about AI and also training about AI. Interestingly, and this is again the base of this research project, what we are not seeing so much is to what extent marginalized communities are also part of these initiatives, but further, we are not seeing so much this engagement, this participation in terms of the design and implementation of AI initiatives. So we do believe that there is a lot of room for public libraries to, first of all, tailor programs for marginalized communities, collaborate with local government, and again, because what we are seeing is that government programs are the ones who may impact the citizens the most, both in terms of benefits, but also harms, and design public participation opportunities. Before closing and thanking you for your attendance and listening to me, I would like to share a few resources. We do have a website where everything that we are producing is going to be posted. There are already a few resources there that you can consult. I have told you about our map of practices. The map can be found within the website, but I wanted to also bring it here for you to click on it faster. And as I said, when you click on the map of practices, you are going to see a very, very short form at the end of the map that you can actually fill if you have a program, a service that we have not identified. We would like this map to stay with us until the end of the project and kind of help us build a community around this issue. And finally, we are going to launch in only a few days a report. It's around a 25-page report where we do explain, we do elaborate on everything I have talked about today, and you will be able to download it. Again, it is a free resource that you will be able to download should you be interested in this topic. And that's going to be all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Mila. We had a request to put the links in the chat,
Sure.
if you have them handy.
I can do that.
Okay. So next up is Traci Tosh. Traci is an assistant professor and librarian at Albany Medical College, and she will be discussing AI and medical education. So take it away.
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Traci Tosh, and I am the research specialist at the Schaefer Library of Health Sciences at Albany Medical College. And my talk today is on the considerations of medical education and artificial intelligence, or AI. I realized after I was asked to present on this that we're at the early stages of any implementation. So first, a little background on where I work. Schaefer Library of Health Sciences serves both Albany Medical College and Albany Medical Center, which includes the hospital. Our institutional mission is committing to improving health by attaining the highest standard of quality in care delivery, education, and research initiatives. Artificial intelligence impacts all three components of our mission. For care delivery, we have decision support tools that are used for making medical decisions, which use AI algorithms. For education and research, we have generative AI tools that can be used for writing, such as ChatGPT. And many journals have specific AI requirements for publishing manuscripts. For today's session, I'm going to focus at the beginning more on the generative AI aspects and the considerations of their use in medical education, and then go into a little bit more of the algorithms later on. At Albany Medical College, library instruction is embedded within the medical school curriculum. We teach a number of courses covering medical informatics, evidence-based healthcare, and scholarly research. Each course has formative and summative assessments for the students to self-assess and faculty to evaluate the students' knowledge and application. Within these courses, there are areas where generative AI could be used. We are aware that the students are already using AI in various ways and would like to not only minimize any impact this may have on the curriculum and the assignments contained within, but give the students best practices on how to effectively and ethically use AI. A committee has been assembled and is working on crafting an educational policy on the use of AI. This policy needs to be broad enough to cover the different educational needs, but still guard against improper use of AI. The committee is made up of members from across the spectrum of the institution in alignment with our educational mission. Aspects of the policy would be compliance on not using these tools in completing submitted work for grading, for answering quizzes, or even for creating substantial components of a poster or presentation for a conference. We want to ensure that students are referencing credible resources, critically appraising the evidence, and synthesizing the evidence for themselves. We expect our students to perform professionally and in an ethical manner at the highest standard. For this reason, the AI policy should include a section for faculty as well, not only to ensure that they are using AI responsibly, but also to allow for transparency in its use for the students. To minimize any possibility of misguided use of AI, some departments are already adding caveats on its use for assignments. An example of this is within the bioethics department, which has a large component of written assignments. Healthcare and Society is a longitudinal course within the bioethics department, which runs in all 4 years of medical school. The written policy for Healthcare and Society is located on the syllabus found on our learning platform. The policy restricts the use of any generative text AI for written assignments, or for outlining or drafting the assignment, or for creating the citations. Use of generative AI without disclosure leads to an honor code violation. The use of AI in the Masters of Bioethics falls under academic integrity, and the use of AI runs the gamut from some use with citing the generative text AI to strictly forbidding the use. Violating these policies will also lead to an honor code violation. We are hopeful that once the written policy is completed, This will mitigate the need to completely forbid the use of AI and the differences within the policies from course to course. We wish our students to understand how to properly use generative AI tools to enhance their productivity without violating academic integrity. AI instructional sessions are not incorporated in any structured format within the curriculum. Rather, they are integrated as gaps are discovered. For example, we have a course titled Scholarly Endeavors, which allows students dedicated time to work on scholarly activities. This year, we changed the design of the course and introduced additional didactic sessions on research design, IRB considerations, writing and publishing. Within the publishing and publishing panel sessions, the use of AI was discussed. This was a time to address misconceptions of AI use in research and publishing with the students. For example, whether AI can be considered an author on a paper. Should AI be used in writing manuscripts? Should it be used in the pre-publication peer review process? What about the writing grant applications or the grant peer review process? These questions were all mentioned and addressed briefly. Next year, I'd like to see these questions more fully discussed, along with consideration of copyright for AI generative works. Currently, I'm working on a thesis project as part of a master's degree I'm pursuing in bioethics, with the goal of having a course centered around the ethics of artificial intelligence that can be incorporated into the bioethics program, either within the healthcare and society course or within the master's degree program. According to a 2023 systematic review titled An Evidence-Based Approach to Artificial Intelligence Education for Medical Students, there is, and I quote, a need for AI-specific ethics to be taught in medical schools to address ethical, legal, and data governance issues, end quote. Up to this point, I've only discussed generative AI, but what about other AI functionality? A 2024 article titled 12 Tips for Addressing Ethical Concerns in the Implementation of Artificial Intelligence in Medical Education discusses the need for educators to understand the ethics of AI. These tips can apply to both AI algorithms as well as generative AI. Some of these tips I can see us using and incorporating as we create a course, and some of the tips might be used for future improvements. So I'm going to go through these tips. Tip number 1 refers to the transparency of the development, functioning, and use of AI systems. I can see how this could be slightly incorporated. However, not being a computer developer is a limitation that impacts my use of this tip. Number 2 is ensuring an algorithmic fairness by minimizing biases as much as possible and conducting bias audits on a regular basis. This is definitely a tip I think should be implemented. Teaching students to look for biases and to be knowledgeable about the data used to train the tools is important. An example of biases in algorithmic AI can be found in the paper titled Ethical Redress of Racial Inequities in AI, Lessons from Decoupling Machine Learning from Optimization and Medical Appointment Scheduling. In this example, an AI algorithm is trained on data that reflects racial biases in medical appointment scheduling. If the data shows, I should say, that low-income patients tend to show up late or not at all to medical appointments, from that data, the AI algorithm learns, and then these patients are then given appointments where they are made to wait longer. The AI algorithm doesn't recognize that maybe the reason they are late is because they didn't have a car. Maybe they lack childcare or they're caring for an elderly patient or an elderly parent. These are humanistic factors that aren't programmed into the algorithm. Tip number 3 is validating the content for accuracy and credibility which is an ongoing process. This is a tip I'd like to see implemented, but will entail collaboration with others who have more experience with the information generated. Tip number 4 is assuring privacy by adhering to strict security protocols and anonymizing data. Again, I see this as a collaboration with other departments, such as our institutional IT department and the Institutional Review Board, or IRB. One point the authors made on this tip was balancing privacy with personalization of the data. Reviewing a student's performance data to construct an educational plan specific to that student would eliminate privacy, but may be beneficial to the process a student makes in their educational experience. An example of personalized performance can be found in the New York University Grossman School of Medicine. And you'll see that here on the screen, where medical education is adapted to each student's learning style based on their academic data. The school calls this type of education precision education. I think this tip connects with tip number 5, which is in obtaining informed consent from the students on the use of AI tools in medical education and potential impacts on the learning environment. This emphasizes the importance of communication and transparency in the use of AI tools for education. Related to the discussion from tip number 4 on personalization, this consent could be either an opt-in or an opt-out choice. Personally, I prefer the opt-in choice so that that option is given to the students upfront versus an opt-out choice, which that choice might be slightly hidden. This is a tip I'd like to see implemented early, as is tip number 6, which is collaboration between AI experts, educators, and students to enable an inclusive approach to learning. This is, again, a collaborative approach, which allows the students to take an active role in their own educational experience. Faculty development in AI ethics is tip number 7. This is a very important component in the development of any educational curriculum. Training sessions should be held so that all faculty have the same level of AI knowledge. The article specifically spoke of training sessions on topics such as bias mitigation, privacy protection, and transparency in AI algorithms. Tip number 8 is AI literacy. So students are knowledgeable about applications, benefits, challenges. To me, this is a no-brainer as a key component of a course centered around the ethics of AI. Tip number 7 was ensuring that the faculty were well-versed in AI ethics. And this tip ensures the students have a level playing field as well. So the discussion of AI algorithm continues. So does the collaboration with other departments who are implementing AI into their work environment. This way, discussions on the use and outcomes, along with any insights, can elevate the understanding of the tools. Tip number 9 is the ongoing evaluation of the technical and operational side of AI to ensure that the information is up to date and aligns with the current medical knowledge. I believe that this tip would involve a collaboration between our IT department, our compliance office, our institutional review board, and faculty to ensure that the AI tools and algorithms continue to stay relevant and evolve as needed. Tip number 10 is having clear accountability for the development, use, and results of AI. One point that the article makes for this tip is to have a transparent framework for accountability so that everybody who is working in these roles can work collaboratively. Tip number 11 is compliance with regulations and standards, such as HIPAA, which stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Obviously, for a medical institution, ensuring compliance with HIPAA is fundamental. This again would entail collaboration with other departments. Finally, tip number 12 is to create an AI oversight committee, ensuring ethical issues are addressed promptly. Many of the tips involve collaboration with other departments, and having an oversight committee would be a very important way to stay on top of all the components of the ever-evolving AI tools and algorithms. In addition to other departments, I'd like to see students have a place on this committee as well. As AI will be a part of their educational experience, they should have a say on how it is implemented to ensure full transparency. Many of these tips come with the caveat of to the best of their ability, meaning that you may not reach full transparency or eliminate bias completely. Also, the article mentions that tip number 3 on validating the content is a time-consuming process, and I would have to agree. To validate the information the AI tools are generating may take multiple iterations with content area experts to ensure the information is accurate and credible. Many of the tips on how educators can ensure a better learning experience for the students, but tip number 6 advises including students to foster a sense of ownership and responsibility. Generative AI tools use prompts, which are the requests queried of an AI tool such as ChatGPT. And we as librarians have expertise in crafting search strategies. So we should be the ones leading the charge on best practices for crafting prompts. Having the knowledge of the strengths and limitations of AI will help learners to be able to critically appraise both the literature and any AI tools that they might consider using in their practice. Ideally, I would like to have the discussions around the use of AI intelligence or artificial intelligence, be integrated into other courses in the medical school curriculum. I don't want this to be a siloed course, as AI impacts most, if not all, educational programs. Once this has been created for the medical school curriculum, I believe it can be modified to fit within other curriculum programs, such as the ones we have here for physician assistants, nurse anesthesia, and basic science graduate students. With the progression to the residency programs and eventually organizational-wide. As policies and courses take a while to build, we are continuing to look for opportunities to discuss the impacts that AI will have in medical education and healthcare. And as a final note, it's not what you know, but who you know. Librarians are the ones who make connections between people, information, and projects. I believe that librarians should be a part of the AI Oversight Committee and are integral to the implementation of AI in medical education. And with that, I thank you for listening to my talk and would be happy at the end to answer any questions. And here is my contact information.
Thank you, Traci, for that presentation. We have one final presenter, David Walker, who is director of the Schaefer Law Library at Albany Law School. And he will be talking about accuracy of AI search results and legal information, I believe.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how well AI does in the context of legal research.
Okay, well, go for it.
All right, so I've been doing legal research for 23 and a half years, and I haven't stopped doing it right now. But the last year has been really interesting, and so I've been monitoring how different AIs work in answering legal questions. So I think off the bat, one of the things that we have to establish is like, what criteria do we use to evaluate an answer to a legal question? And I'm going to go with these 4, right? So 1, the answer has to be correct. There's nothing worse than an incorrect legal answer. Now, the correct answer to any legal question is probably it depends. And we'll get into that with the next criterion is comprehensive. Like the answer to a legal question has to be comprehensive. And that means like you can have correct aspects to an answer, but if you don't fully explain all of the law in a particular jurisdiction in a particular scenario, it's going to it's going to essentially be incorrect, right? The other thing is law changes. This is H.L.A. Hart said, in every legal system, there's this rule of change. We need to have mechanisms for law to change. And I think that we all recognize the fact that law does change on a regular basis, a daily basis. If you think about it, there are 60,000 plus pages in the Federal Register each year. And then for me, and it's not necessarily necessary for the fourth issue, but in law it is, because we need to be able to cite our authority to when we're presenting a legal question, at least to a court. But we also have to know where the information comes from. And so this is the criterion by which I basically evaluate AI answers to legal questions that I pose. And in order for that to work, I have to know what the answer is. So I can't start with the AI. I have to do the research and the analysis, find the answer, and then check it. So I've been doing that over the last year. Now, what I found is we're going to go live today. I'm going to do everything live, which is it's kind of messy, but the quality of AI changes rapidly. Every couple of months, it sort of changes. And so the quality of AI is like life itself. If you look at it from like an Eastern perspective, there was like chaos, and then it gets a little better, and then it gets worse again, and then it gets a little better, and then it gets worse again, and then it gets a little better, and then it gets worse again. And today we are on a little better. So if I were to if I did these examples 2 months ago, they were a little worse. And in 2 months, they might be a little worse unless we've hit nirvana in the AI, but I don't think we're there yet. So I'm going to close out of this real quick, and we're going to start with some easy questions. So I'm going to go through Claude, I'm going to go through Copilot, and I'm going to go through Lexis's plus AI assistant. And we're going to sort of evaluate these different products. The first question I'm going to ask, and what I'll do is I'll also throw it into the chat so you can examine these, is, does the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protect individuals from employment discrimination based on their sexual orientation? So I'm in Claude, and I'm just going to ask Claude a question. And it says no, but remember, it depends. So it says no, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does not explicitly prohibit employment discrimination based on sexual orientation. The act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, but it does not directly address sexual orientation. So that is correct, but also it's not comprehensive, but it'll get a little bit more comprehensive. However, in recent years, there have been some key developments and legal interpretations that have extended legal protections of LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace. And the most important one of these is in 2020, the United States Supreme Court in Bostock versus Clayton County ruled in Bostock versus Clayton County that the discrimination against, you can see this, right? Individuals for being gay or transgender is a form of sex discrimination, which is prohibited by Title VII in the Civil Rights Act. And then it sort of concludes, so while the original 1964 Civil Rights Act did not directly cover sexual orientation, later legal interpretations and rulings, especially the 2020 Bostock decision, have established some protections for LGBTQ. Well, the most important one is the fact that the Supreme Court ruled that it does in Bostock, right? Now, we've heard a lot about AI hallucinations, and they exist in these programs that are free like Claude, but they also have been found to exist in Lexis and Westlaw a little bit. So one of the things I like to do, and this is always sort of important, is sort of follow up. And I have a citation for, let's say, the authority you provided, and this is always an important question. This is the citable thing, so I can go and look this up and clarify on my own that this actually happened. Now, again, all of this stuff is subject to change. So I don't know, this is the answer today. It might not be the answer tomorrow. So Claude got the right answer here, and that's pretty good. So let's go to Copilot. This is Microsoft's AI. And with Microsoft's AI, you have 3 different options. One is more creative, which is very interesting. There's balance and there's more precise. So start a concise chat, useful for fact finding. So when I'm doing legal research, I probably want something that is precise. So I'm going to ask the question, does the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protect individuals from employment discrimination based on their sexual orientation? And it's going to take some time, and we'll see what happens. This is what happens when you go live and your internet connection has been wonky for the last couple of weeks. And they say, yes, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does protect individual from employment discrimination based on their sexual orientation. This is protection is specifically under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the one thing that I like about Copilot, what it does is it provides sort of links to where it purportedly got this information. So it's verifiable, it's citable, not necessarily citable in the same ways that I want, but it's citable. So here, and the Supreme Court issued a landmark decision in the case of Bostock. The court held that the prohibition against sex discrimination, Title VII, includes employment discrimination against an individual on the basis of sexual orientation or transgender status. And then I can open one of these links. Now, ideally, what I want is a site to Bostock. So I'll just ask, can you provide a citation to Bostock? And its answer, let's see how it does. It would be even better if I have the document. And then what I would do in this particular case is copy that and then find it to determine whether or not this is a real case. So let's move on to Lexis's AI assistant, and let's just create a new conversation, and we're going to ask the question, does this same question that we've been asking, and we're going to select our jurisdiction. We're just going to say U.S. federal. I'll do all fed. Apply the jurisdiction, because jurisdiction matters in legal research. The answer in Pennsylvania might not be the answer in New York. And one of the things that Lexis plus AI is doing is it's a generative AI model, but it's also an extractive AI model. So it goes through and it's actually pulling information from its database and then creating a response. So it tends to take a little bit longer than Copilot or Claude, and I think that might be the reason. For the longer questions, I'm not going to use this, but let's see exactly what the commercial law legal AIs are doing. So searching for primary sources, searching in secondary sources. Yes, under the United States federal jurisdiction, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 does protect individuals from employment discrimination based on their sexual orientation. This protection is derived from the interpretation and term sex within the act to include sexual orientation as established by the Supreme Court in Bostock versus Clayton County. And so this information is correct. It's also because it's a simple question. It's comprehensive. In this case, it's current. There hasn't been a decision from the Supreme Court to overturn it. And they've also provided me citations, so this is pretty good. Now, one of the things that you can also do with Lexis AI, should you you have it is you can also look at related material, and they'll provide cases, additional statutes, practical guidance, treatises, administrative codes on the issue, which is helpful. In the past, I found that sometimes they don't actually always pull the best authority in their answers. In this particular case, they did. So what we were looking at here, though, was a very specific question, and there's going to be numerous sources for this information. So I'm going to give it a more complex question, because I imagine the average person might be asking questions like this, but they might be interested in finding out, well, what's the answer to my particular legal problem? And so what I've done is I've sort of created this fact pattern that I use and I test out, and it deals with common law marriage in New York and technically Pennsylvania. So I'm going to copy this and I'll put it, you could read it with me in the chat. Oh, well, I didn't actually send the last question, but I'll make sure to do it this time. If it might be too long. Okay, let me try it again. Oh, I went to go to everyone. All right, hold on. Chat. For some reason it is not going, so I'll read it. It's a nice little story. On October 31st, 2003, Gary Glenn, a musician by trade, met Glenn Ross, former drummer of the band Always Be Closing. They began dating. 1 month later, Glenn moved into Gary's apartment overlooking Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On December 20th, 2004, Gary performed at a concert with his band Highlands Farm at Brownie's Irish Pub in Philadelphia. During the concert, Gary invited Glenn onto stage and said to Glenn through the PA system, "Glenn, after the hell I've been through, I never thought I wanted to be married to another person ever again. But from this day on, I want to spend another I never want to spend another day until I die without you. Glenn, I take you to be my wife from this day forward." After Gary's declaration, Glenn ran up to Gary and hugged him and said, "I cannot wait to be your wife, Gary." They kissed. It was a very touching moment in music history. 3 days later, Gary and Glenn took a 10-day trip to Louisville, Kentucky, thought by some to be the most romantic place on earth. When they returned, they resumed living together in Gary's apartment in Philadelphia until May of 2005, when they moved to Saratoga Springs, New York, to be closer to Gary's mother, who had recently lost her husband in a boating accident. Gary bought a house at 55 Union Avenue in Saratoga Springs, where he and Glenn lived until Gary died. He named the property Glen Gardens, as evinced by the sign in front of the house, which read Glen Gardens. The property happened to be full of gardens. After December 20th, 2004, Glenn was known to often refer to Gary as her husband. When Gary would introduce Glenn, he would say, "This is my partner Glenn," never specifically referring to as his wife, but when others would refer to Glenn as his wife, he would never correct them. Though they were thought to be a happy couple throughout their life in Saratoga Springs, Gary died intestate on February 28, 2024. His only living relative is his brother Ross. Glenn has consulted our firm and seeks to inherit Gary's estate. We'll need to determine whether a New York court would find that Glenn and Gary were in a common law marriage at the time of Gary's death. So, we're going to throw this into the chat, and this is a more complicated issue. Now, one of the things that people generally say when they're coaching on prompting is that the more facts you give it, the better the AI does. So let's sort of examine what happens. Now, I'll go through and let me explain this. In New York, there's no common law marriage in New York. There used to be, it was abolished. But New York courts will recognize common law marriages that were validly entered into in other states. In doing so, they look at the law of the state where the common law marriage occurred. Pennsylvania had common law marriage until January, I think, 5th, 2005. There was a test to determine whether or not there was a common law marriage is in verba presente, which is the exchange of words in the present tense, taking for each person taking the other to be husband and wife. Additionally, because there's not always evidence of an exchange of words in the present tense, they created a rebuttable presumption, which does not overturn that particular test, to say, well, if the parties were both were cohabitated and had a reputation as being married in the community, that's enough to satisfy whether or not they would be married. Now, in this particular hypothetical, it's kind of unclear because Gary says, I take you from here on out to be my wife, right? So that is a present, those are words in the present tense, taking her to be his wife. She, on the other hand, says, hey, she's like, I can't wait to be your wife. So there's an ambiguity here. It's like, is it in the present tense or is it the future tense, and does that necessarily meet the test? So let's see what Claude does. To determine whether common law marriage existed between Gary and Glenn at the time of Gary's death, we need to analyze the relevant laws in New York and the specific facts of the relationship. Thank you. That is true. Common law marriage is recognized in New York, but the requirements are stringent. And it's like, well, that's kind of true, right? So this is true. Common law marriage is recognized in New York, but it's only recognized if it's occurred in a state, the contract was entered into a state that recognizes common law marriage. So remember, we're talking, that's a correct statement, but this is not comprehensive. It doesn't take into account certain things. The following elements must be present for a common law marriage to be valid in New York: an agreement between the parties entering into marriage, living together as spouses, holding themselves out as husband and wife, which all seems to be part of like the Pennsylvania tests. Regarding the agreement to enter into marriage, there needs to be evidence of mutual intent to establish a marital relationship. While Gary's declaration during the concert on December 2024 and Glenn's acceptance could be construed as an express intent to marry, it is unclear whether this was meant as a formal agreement to enter into a marriage or simply a public expression of their commitment to each other. So that's kind of, I would say that his intent was clear. Hers might not have been, but let's see. The second element, which is not really a second element under Pennsylvania law, it's a separate test. It's the first element of a separate test. Is the second element of living together as spouses is clearly met, as Gary and Glenn lived together from November 2003 until Gary's death in February 2024. That is right. That is a really great analysis. It's pretty simple. They lived together for 21 years. So, all right, the third element of holding themselves out as husband and wife is more ambiguous. I actually don't think so, but the facts indicate that Glenn often referred to Gary as her husband, which would support this element. However, Gary himself never explicitly referred to Glenn as his wife, instead introducing her as his partner. I don't really find that to go against the argument, because I think people do that all the time now. But additionally, while others may refer to Glenn as Gary's wife, Gary did not correct them. This alone may not be sufficient to establish that they held themselves out to be married. Okay. Based on the facts presented, there are arguments on both sides, good, as to whether a common law marriage existed between Gary and Glenn. The strongest factors in favor of a common law marriage are their long-term cohabitation and Glenn's reference to Gary as her husband. It's actually what happened on stage would be the most important. However, the clear lack of agreement to enter into the marriage would fail. Ultimately, the determination of whether a common law marriage existed would depend on specific evidence presented and the interpretation of the facts by New York court. That is just entirely true statement, no matter what you say about law in New York. Okay, so we have all this information, and what I've established is it's partially true, but not entirely true. We need to actually look at New York law, and then New York law guide tells us to look in Pennsylvania law. And so these elements don't really mean anything. But let's do the follow-up that I always like to do is, can you provide citation to legal authority and support of your response? And let's see what it does. And so we can sort of evaluate what's happening here. And what might be happening is that this is a 2002 case from the Second Department in New York, but and the three elements are required to establish a common law marriage, or these three things. And I don't really know, because I'd have to dig. One, I'd have to see if this is a real case. Two, I'd have to read it, and in reading it, I might find, and what I'm going to guess is what happened if this is a real case, is that they're applying the law of another state, and those were the elements. So, and this goes back to what like Traci was saying. We can do, AI can do some of the work, but we have to verify it, and sometimes the verification process takes a long time, and at the end of the day, it might just be easier to do the analysis yourself. But let's try Copilot. Let's see how Copilot does. We're going to do Copilot. I'm going to ask you anything. Well, I'm going to ask you this question based on a fact pattern. And it'll take some time. And, oh, okay. Keeps on doing it. While we're doing this, and we're going to ask Claude to analyze under Pennsylvania law. All right, so Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI, based on my research, New York does not recognize common law marriage for relationships established within its borders. That is true. This means that regardless of how long the couple live together or whether they consider themselves married, they will not be considered legally married in New York without a marriage license and a formal ceremony. That is not true. However, there's an exception. Oh, good. So this is, we're getting into the comprehensive part. New York will acknowledge a common law marriage if they were validly established in another state that recognizes such marriage. This is due to the full faith credit clause of the United States Constitution, which requires each state to recognize and give effect to the laws and judicial decisions of other states. So in this case, and then it does this analysis. They live together, but what it has to do is establish what the law is in Pennsylvania first. And it does do some things, like it says, however, Glenn can prove that their common law marriage was validly established in another state that recognizes such marriages before they moved to New York. Then New York might recognize their marriage, which is right. But based on the information provided, it seemed they lived in Pennsylvania and then moved to New York. Pennsylvania does not recognize common law marriages contracted after January 1st, 2005, which is true. Therefore, it seems unlikely the New Court would find that Glenn and Gary were in a common law marriage at the time of Gary's death. And so that's, I don't think that, so that in this particular instance, the marriage contract, if it occurred at all, would have occurred on the day in which Gary invited Glenn on the stage. And that happened before January 1st, 2005. So this particular analysis is wrong. So while I get some of the law right here, its analysis is wrong, which is an important part. And also it's not giving us a full picture. Now, what it does do is it provides us some citations to places where it gets this information. And I would say that in most of these instances, I mean, I wouldn't cite this to a court. And I think that some of these are law firms who are writing about particular matters as a way to get clients to come in the door. And then, you know, so we have divorce firm New York, divorcelaw.com, trottelaw.com. And I'm not saying that these aren't, that they're not right in providing accurate information on their website. I'm just saying it's not the place that I might necessarily go for information. So this is where, look where Copilot is pulling its information from. So it's good to know. What about Lexis AI? So we're gonna just do, I've already done this one. So I'm gonna click on my previous prompts using this very same question under Lexis's AI, which has the law, and this is doing a much better job than it would have in the past. So in New York, common law marriages are not recognized unless the parties have had a contact with the jurisdiction that recognizes such a relationship as a legal matter. This is supported by the case of Potter v. Davy, where an appellant's claim of common law marriage is deemed a legal impossibility because New York did not recognize common law marriage absent contact by the parties within the jurisdiction that recognize such relationship as legal marriage. The requirements for common law marriage vary by jurisdiction. For instance, one key feature of common law marriage is a present agreement to live together as husband and wife with an assumption of the resulting marital obligations, which will continue until death. Well, that's not the Pennsylvania rule. So I don't know that that's correct. However, a week spent by a New York couple in South Carolina did not result in a common law marriage where the man allegedly stated, "We were married in the eyes of God." The New York court held that this declaration did not evince the intent to solemnize a marriage. Instead, the kind of words used by one desiring to continue the parties' present state of living together, i.e. in a relationship short of marriage. Now, what is it? This is citing the nature of marital contract. I just want to open that up and I'll go back to it to see what it is. In the case of Cross versus Cross, the court found that in order to establish a common law marriage, there must be an exchange of words in the present tense spoken with the specific purpose that the legal relationship of the husband and wife there be created, which is the test in Pennsylvania. So let's just open that case up. When analyzing the facts of relationship under requirements for common law marriage in New York, it's important to note that the party asserting the existence of the common law marriage must not only establish prima facie evidence, but must also overcome, if the relationship is shown to be meretricious at its inception, the presumption that the meretricious character of the relationship has continued. Okay, and then it's giving me some additional information. Now, I did choose New York in this particular instance as the jurisdiction, but let's look up. This is New York civil practice. So this isn't as it concerns the Pennsylvania law. This isn't going to help us. Sorry, Pat. And then Cross versus Cross. What are they doing in this particular case? Let's see. And it's not that no state is necessarily going to. Yeah, so here we have Pennsylvania cases. So they're applying Pennsylvania law. That's why we got that specific rule. They got the Pennsylvania rule right as to what constitutes a common law marriage. So let's do one more thing, and let's just change the jurisdiction to Pennsylvania, right? Which I think I did before, and see what happens. Jurisdiction. Ask the same case in a new jurisdiction. I'm going to go to Pennsylvania, apply jurisdiction. And this might take a while. So while this is happening, I'm going to sort of follow up on some questions that I ask myself on a regular basis. And is AI alone enough to answer legal questions? And I think the answer is no, because I think you need to be able to validate things. And so I think we still need access to legal information. And we have to actually also understand weights of authority in law, and we have to do analyses, and we have to know a number of things. Can it replace lawyers? I hope not And I know that's because I work at a law school and I want there to continue to be lawyers, but I don't think so. I think that it's limited in its analytical capabilities at this point. And also one of the great things about lawyers is lawyers tend to come up with novel theories about legal issues. And I don't know that AI can replicate. And can it replace librarians? Well, at this point, as long as I keep on pointing out the inconsistencies in the AI and its shortcomings, I think the answer is no. But we're still generating the response. And with Pennsylvania, and what we're here, the elements for common law marriage in Pennsylvania include a positive mutual agreement to marry, cohabitation sufficient to warrant a fulfillment of necessary relationship of a man and wife, and an assumption of the marital duties and obligations. When actually all you need is the agreement must be in the words in the present tense, in verba presente, and not in the future tense. The law imposes a heavy burden on those asserting this. So I'm going to say even this answer that you need like the exchange of words plus the other things isn't true. It's you need the exchange of words in the present tense, taking each other to be husband and wife before January 1st, 2005. And if you don't have that, then we'll look at two other factors. So this, even in the legal AI, which is designed for specifically to answer legal questions, isn't really answering it in the way that I think it ought to be answered. So what I say is when you're dealing with when you're dealing with patrons and they're trying to figure out answers to legal questions, I would caution them from necessarily using AI alone. But remember, these are the things they're always looking for. Is it correct? Is it comprehensive? Is it current? And is it citable? And one of the things that we really want to look at the answers is it citable? And we're always going to, no matter what, we're still going to have to do the analysis ourselves to determine whether or not the AI is as intelligent as humans. And as it relates to law at this given time, on this given day, the answer, in my opinion, is no. Thank you.
Thank you for giving that presentation, David. So we have about 20 minutes for questions. If you have them, put them in the Q&A for our presenters.
While we're waiting to see if we get any questions, I'd like to thank our four panelists. Talk about covering AI from such different perspectives. It was really fascinating. I'm sure any member we talk to will come at it differently. So I definitely can envision some follow-up because you all gave us a lot to think about. So thank you. And thank you again for participating.
While we're waiting, I was going to say, hey, Doug, so my doom and gloom vision of a future of AI wasn't like the robots in Terminator. It was actually like, it was more of Dune. So if you understand, like in Dune, it was that people got lazy, right?
Right.
And they didn't develop their minds. And so that's really one of my concerns about AI is really that we're not going to keep up with the mental development that we need in order to do all the things, like make sure we verify the information, look for inconsistencies like in the hands and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. Just because it's like, I'm part of Gen X, that lost generation, the feral generation that everybody's like, don't wake them up because they jump from baby boomer to millennial. But I have a kid who is a Gen Zer and he asks me these questions all the time. I'm like, you have the power in your hand to find out anything you need to know. And why are you on TikTok all the time just watching dumb 15-second videos? I'm like, you can do this. You're lazy. It's making you lazy because the information is there. Where back in my day, we didn't have internet in middle school, high school, and even college for a good chunk of it. So we had to go to a library. We had to beg mom and dad to buy us that New World book or Britannica encyclopedia set to have at home. And you were, part of my language, you were the shit as a kid if you had an encyclopedia set at home because you didn't have to go to the library to do your paperwork. So yeah, I could definitely see that as an aspect. My wife and I always banter back together. I love debating. I love taking both sides of a story and, seeing what I can, squeeze out of it. And the one thing that we're talking about was, of course, it was a thing about AI. It must have been on John Oliver or Daily Show or something that we were watching. And, we're talking about how people are scared of, like I said, the Terminator 2 type situation. And I'm like, the problem is AI is never going to get to that point. It's always the human element that's going to be the evil. It's never going, the machine will never get to the point where it's going to have like an evil thought to do it. It's just not set up that way. But it'll make life a lot more easier and lazier for people, and it could make things better or worse. Just like it's both. It's devil and angel.
Information is neutral, right? So information.
Right. Exactly.
So to answer the question that came up, are these freely available? So the Lexus AI Plus is, that's a commercial product, so you have to pay LexisNexis, which is Relics, which was Reed Elsevier, money to use that. But Claude is free, and I put that in the chat. It's Claude.ai. Copilot is free. It's through Microsoft, so it's copilot.microsoft.com. And there's another one that you could take a look at. It's Google's Gemini. I didn't have time to go through all the things, and I didn't go through ChatGPT. But Gemini.google.com is another resource that you can sort of look at. Out of the three, I can't tell you which one's the best. It changes all the time. I had my students this semester, they evaluated different AIs, and the results kind of like change. So, but yeah, to answer the question, with the exception of Lexis, everything else is open source.
And that's funny, Dave, that you mentioned that. It's funny how there isn't a centralized AI in this world. Everybody seems to be developing their own or making something that they started off with, like a smart home assistant, to be more robust. Next week is Apple's WWDC, Worldwide Developer Conference, where they're going to be talking about iOS 18 for the iPhone and the iPad, and then also Mac OS updates. And it's already been told through the leaks on Twitter X and everything else that it's going to be a heavy AI operating system. So I'm really curious to see what next week unveils, because that's consumer and also business oriented operating systems. So what's that going to open the door for everybody?
Which kind of gets to an important point, which is beyond the scope of this panel, that there is a lot of commercial interests that are behind it that are in some ways more worrying than the actual tools.
Yeah. I can't remember who mentioned it, maybe Dave or maybe Traci, about, your phones are always listening to you. And that's a form of AI that's taking that information. And next thing you know, you've got an Amazon ad on Facebook for, robo litter, because you were looking up, oh, how do I get rid of the cat stink in my cat litter room? Oh, hey, buy a robo litter. So, they're always listening. Information is neutral, but information is also the most valuable commodity in the world.
So I'm not seeing a lot of questions. Do we want to wait another few minutes to see if anyone else has anything to say, or?
Thank you, Kim. Bias in some of the AI image tools you use. Kate, that's a great question, because that was one of the things that started popping up when Adobe Sensei, their AI tool that they've kind of branched into everything that Adobe's doing. You're finding that AI imagery still has a knack for having issues creating or recognizing people of color. And it's definitely gotten better over the years, but I still remember it was right around pandemic. We were kind of coming out of the pandemic, and there was a huge story about how they're trying to figure out facial expressions so that a computer can learn how somebody's actually feeling based on a smile, a frown, the way your eyes are kind of either glaring or big. And they found that people of color weren't registering properly, and they went back and found out it's because that information wasn't definitely being fed in. They just kind of let it start feeding itself, and predominantly it was going Caucasian. There was more contrast in the face of a Caucasian person than there was in a person of color. And that's all they're looking at is pixels. They're looking at dark pixels versus next to light pixels. And that's how they're creating the image of, oh, that's a smile, because it kind of makes that kind of a shape. When you get certain people of color that have a darker shade, you can't quite see the contrast as much, or at least I should say the camera, depending on how the quality of the camera is, can't make out that differentiation. So it makes it tough. So they've been very much trying to get rid of that bias and make it more all-encompassing what they feed it for imagery. And the big thing also is copyright is another issue that they have run into. And what's funny is I actually saved an article that I was going to bring up, but I wasn't sure if I'd have time. But can I just share this real quick for you guys to see? This was an interesting article. Ansel Adams, Adobe got scolded by Ansel Adams' family or corporation because in their world of Adobe stock imagery, people were feeding it imagery that was like Ansel Adams photography, very noir, black and white, high contrast. And people were looking up Ansel Adams as their search category, and the AI was generating imagery, and Ansel Adams' family didn't like that because they figured it is a creative license that they own on that type of imagery. So it's one of those, this is an evolving technology that will keep evolving. And I don't know if it'll ever come to fruition. I think it's just going to always keep growing and growing and growing, and we'll find new pitfalls along the way. Did that answer your question there, Kate? I'm sorry. Okay, I saw your thank you.
And Chris also put our LibGuide in chat just now, and that is the work of the AI and Libraries Committee, where we're putting AI articles, AI resources. So please take a look at that for additional information. And you can also do the challenge while you're there. Okay, Mike, it seems pretty quiet. I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank all our presenters for giving wonderful presentations, and thank you to all who attended. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.